Hey, it's Amy Shaw here. I have something that's been on my mind and definitely been on my heart the last couple days, and I just want to share it with you guys. It's not a real defined topic. I don't even know what I'm going to title this video. It's going to be a little bit rambly, but it's just something I sort of need to talk about and get out there to you guys. So I have a history of depression. I say that in quotes because I had a real shift on that. I come from a lineage, and I've shared this in previous videos. My father's mother, so my paternal grandmother, allegedly attempted suicide long time ago. My dad was about 3 years old when this happened. This was in the 50s, the early 50s, and back in those days they institutionalized women that didn't kind of fit in with the prescribed social role. I actually have a book back there on the shelf. I stopped to go grab it for you really quick. It's called Mad Wives, Schizophrenic Women in the 1950s. Obviously, I bought this book and was compelled to read it because it's part of my lineage, part of my family story. I grew up hearing the story, and my dad to this day hasn't resolved issues around this. And so I had this long-standing narrative that depression runs in my family. I grew up hearing my dad repeatedly talk about suicide. I experienced suicidality myself, have had suicide attempts, and so it really does run in my family. I believe that there probably is a biochemical genetic component to it, but I'm trying in this life, in this incarnation, to heal that and to gain mastery over it. And so that's been part of my personal work and part of my transmutation. And a few years ago, I had a real shift in that thinking because I have these episodes. I call it snake medicine now, but at the time it felt like depressive episodes. They would just kind of come, and as I would go through them, they were very hard. It was like incredibly painful, and there was like this deep existential sort of like, I don't know how to describe it, intellectually. I can only say, like, physically, it was just gut-wrenching. I mean, there was a real physical sort of visceral experience of it, and the emotion. It was like being on the edge of the event horizon and looking into the big, giant abyss of the black hole and feeling the pull of being sucked in. I mean, that sounds so dramatic, but it was really hard stuff. And I would go through these periods and I always just said, oh, it's depression. And then I had this kind of mental shift. And I realized that no, it's not really depression. If you go down the list of the DSM of what depression is, it's like very clear. And I didn't fit into that box. It wasn't like I was unable to function. It wasn't like I couldn't get out of bed. It wasn't like, I was just listless and lost joy in life. No, it was more this like ferocious thrashing was happening. And this thrashing was wearing me out. And, I would have days where I'm like, oh my God, I don't even want to get out of bed. I don't even know why I'm alive. But I still did it. I still did my responsibilities. And so it wasn't like your typical depression. But even as I was going through that, I would have like these horrible suicidal thoughts that were just relentless. They come like ocean waves and just don't stop and don't stop and don't stop and don't stop. So I had, that cognitive component too of that voice, blah, 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 blah. And it was battling that as well. So that was my experience of it, and I've come to more understand it now. I call it snake medicine, and to me, I came to realize that's my process. I'm a processor. Not everybody here is a processor. And the interesting thing is that there's so many different kinds of shamans, and they all come with their own life history, personality, biology, DNA, lineage. They come with so unique. There's no two that are alike. There's certain threads and commonalities that sort of run through all of shamanism and the shamanic path, but even the archetype itself has so many different facets, and not everybody's going to express every single facet. So once I started realizing that it wasn't something that was wrong with me, and that I didn't have to like label it, and every time I went through that, ask myself, what is wrong with me? Why can't I resolve? Because I had done so many years of like introspection and healing and and to like keep coming back to this point, it was frustrating. And I started asking, what is wrong with me? I got a very clear sign from the spirits, and I won't get into that, but it became sort of like a touch point for me, a mantra, a life lesson, and it had to do with buffalo medicine and processing. And I really came into myself when I realized, stop resisting that snake medicine and accept that that's why I'm here. That's why I've incarnated. That's why all this really horrendous, horrible crap has happened to me, because that's what I'm here for, to transmute that crap and turn it into gold. And so that's a process. It doesn't just happen. It's not like you just wake up and say, oh, I'm just going to project my astral body into 5D and now all of this is an illusion and it went away. For some people, that is where they're at and that's their reality, and that's okay. I don't say that it's wrong and I can't fault it. I can only say for myself, I'm here to be an alchemist. I'm here to transmute and to turn bad things into gold. And in that sense, I'm sort of like, the planetary, the bottom dweller, right, that eats the crap at the bottom. I mean, that's sort of, I see myself as, I'm the street team. I'm not trying to be the spiritual guru. I'm not trying to be like the ascended guide or ascended master or any of that. I'm the street team. I'm the lady that's next to you in the foxhole out on the battlefield. And I'm the one that's encouraging you, don't fall into your fear, and we got this. And, I'm the street team. And the street team, we sort of like live in the gutter. We sort of live in the dirt. We're dirty. We're bloody. We're messy. We're dirty. We're scrappers. And that's me. I'm kind of like, I'm a scrapper, and I have that warrior spirit, and that's just part of my expression, and I've come to understand that that's okay. And so being a processor, I'm going to experience things heavily, and that's part of that snake medicine. When it comes, it's like, oh shit, here we go again. Ugh. It's not easy work by any means. Okay. Now that I shared a little bit about myself, what I want to share with you is something that happened to me about a month ago. A month ago, snake medicine just spontaneously visited me. But it was different because each time I've experienced it, I've brought more and more consciousness to it and learned how to self-care through it. And so it's gotten better. Still hard, but it's gotten better. This time it came on and it was acute. I mean, generally when snake medicine comes, it has to do with my transmutation process. So it's connected to something that I'm working on. And a lot of times it is like an ego death. It's a form of ego death. So it's consciously connected to me, something happening in my life, and me like working on that and having to like let go and transmute to, growing out of my skin and shedding. So it's connected. But this time it came, it wasn't like clearly connected consciously to anything. It was like I woke up one day I'm like my normal self, experiencing myself as my normal self, normal thought pattern, normal state of being. The next day I woke up and I'm like acutely, oh my God, I'm suicidal. I just want to die. Why am I here? And the thoughts were just pounding and pounding and pounding. And it was relentless, okay? By like the third or fourth day of this, it was wearing me down so bad that I literally came this close to checking myself into a psychiatric hospital. I'm not joking. I was like, I'm not strong enough. I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. So then I began to ask, like, what is this about? Like, I have to figure out, because I'm not in a position in my situation and my family to just check out and go into a psychiatric hospital. I'm like a mom, and I have a son with autism that can't really function without me at this point. He really isn't independent enough, and just my husband like works full time, and I basically I'm very much needed, and I would very much be missed, and my house, well, probably wouldn't fall apart. I mean, because realistically, what if I die? I mean, they'd function without me. But I have this enormous pressure that I can't just decide I'm going to check out, go take a vacation at, Club Med. I can't, it's not an option. So I have to try to white knuckle it as much as I can, which is what I was doing. I was white knuckling it to this point where I was like, oh God, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm not strong enough. The other side of that is that I knew if I went into the psychiatric hospital, because I've been that road before, multiple times, I know it too well. The outcome of that is they're going to put me on medication. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It doesn't matter what I say to them or where my spiritual, self, it doesn't matter. They're going to say, well, you came here for a reason, and so you're not leaving without medication. And so basically, I was like, do I want that? Do I really, truly want that? Which I didn't. But I mean, it did get to that point where I was like, holy shit, maybe I need medication. Luckily, I did get through it though. And I was able to, I reached out to some of my shamanic friends and I specifically asked for extraction. I asked my very trusted friends, to employ my spirit guides to assist with that. And, the very next day I felt 85% improvement from that extraction work that my shaman friend did. So I know that this stuff works. I have firsthand testimony and experience. I've been through shamanic healing myself multiple times, so I know that it works. So I did do that. I reached out to my friend, very powerful shaman, and got that assistance. And I felt about 85% better. But by about the second day of that, here it came again. Like this huge wave of just acute, sudden. And I was like, okay, what is this? There's multiple things that are happening in my life, multiple levels. And so I'm looking at all the levels and kind of going in and doing an assessment. And, the bottom line of it was, the conclusion I came to, it's the frickin' mold. It's the mold. I haven't lived in Austin, Texas my whole life. We just moved here in 2013. So we've been here about 4 years. All 4 of those years have been hard in terms of like the allergies and our adjustment, our physical adjustment, because we're not used to it. I was born and raised in California 40 years of my life. So my body's acclimated to the allergens in California. And then we came to Texas, Central Texas. Oh my gosh. And the mold. And I started realizing, because I as soon as I got the clue that maybe it was the mold, I was, started tracking the mold counts. And they're like through the roof, like 30 times normal. And I started realizing it's the freaking mold. So then I was thinking about the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening. Got so much criticism. People just don't like him. And, there's so much criticism about him. M. Night Shyamalan, to me, he's Hollywood shaman. Every single one of his movies resonate with me on a level. And to me, that guy's like wide awake, and he's been awake for decades making movies that people just don't get, because they're going to be entertained and they're looking at it like, ooh, Hollywood, and they feel like it falls short or that it's very scripted. But they're missing the whole point. To me, M. Night Shyamalan is a Stanley Kubrick, on every level of, how he embeds in his movies, the colors that he uses. I know I've talked about it before, but I just think about his movies so much. And so that's what came to mind is The Happening. Is it possible that things in our environment, the mold, the allergies, the spores, all that, even what's in our water systems, is it possible that it can alter our frequency in such a way, alter our immune system in such a way that it actually causes suicidal thoughts? And the interesting thing is that we're multi-layered beings. So you can look at this emotionally, you can look at it spiritually, you can look at it physically, because there's no way to really, honestly, separate those things. They're all integrated to such a high level that it takes a fine amount of discernment, the utmost discernment to disentangle all that and even to work with it, which is part of being a shaman, is being able to do that. So it was interesting, as soon as I stepped back and I said, it's the mold that's doing this to me, that's making me feel like this physically, and it's actually even altering my thoughts. As soon as I did that, it's like the power went away from it, and then I was able to actually begin working with it shamanically and integrating my body and saying, okay, okay, it's the mold and this is happening, and we took certain steps within our house. We got out our dehumidifiers, which we hadn't used in a few years, and turned them on to, kind of pull the moisture out of the air. I have a really high grade air filter, and we plugged that thing in and turned it on. So we took steps necessary within our home to try to address the issue. But then I was also able to align myself sort of physically and spiritually to the mold, and started, telling my body that, I can transmute that. I don't have to go that way with it. So this brings up another issue, and I know this video is going to be really long, but it brings up another issue in another M. Night Shyamalan movie. It got me really thinking about emotion. And, for me, when I'm in that snake medicine state, my emotions are like, whoa! I mean, just like zinging off the charts. And I think, in our society, we have this sort of prejudice against women, against the feminine, because the feminine is more emotional. But I was thinking about how our emotions are actually a language, and we haven't been taught the language. We've just been taught that emotions are bad, don't feel them. And there's a reason probably, right, that we've been taught that, but in actuality, our emotions are our language. So what's happened, because we haven't been taught to read the language and to work with it, to have mastery over it, and self-control over it, because we haven't been taught these things, it's like an either-or situation. We're either experiencing off-the-chart emotion, and it's controlling us, and we don't know how to master it, or we're trying to shove it down, and not feel it at all. And that's either position's crazy. So it made me think of the other M. Night Shyamalan movie, which actually is probably my least favorite movie of his, which is After Earth. But the tagline of that movie is that danger is real, fear is a choice. And the whole movie is based on the premise that he's trying to teach his son how to control his autonomic nervous system to respond to this extremely hostile environment that wants to hurt him, in a way that he's master over the fear, but responding to the danger intelligently. And that's the only way that that they can survive on this extremely hostile planet. So it's a really interesting premise. And I was thinking about that movie, and thinking about motion, and thinking about how our emotions really are a language. They're a language of our body in relative position to our place on Earth, with other people in interaction with our environment, and they tell us clues that our conscious mind might not be able to tell us. So emotion, because emotion is an actual biochemical reaction happening in our body, and we feel it, but we tend to, because of how it's been presented to us and taught to us in our society, we feel it and we tend to sort of project it out as if it's not a real thing, as if it's something that this isn't really happening and you can control it, when in actuality we should be grabbing hold of it, because it's an energy source originating from within our body biochemically. We should be grabbing a hold of it and not only taming it, but listening to what it's telling us. See, emotion is the source, the very, very source of our intuition. Our intuition doesn't come from our head. A lot of people think that, intuition is because I have, knowledge is coming from my head. And that's even really tricky for some of us who have direct knowing, which is my usual way of knowing, is through direct knowing. It just comes in, and it's much more cognitive process. The confusing thing about direct knowing is that you don't really know. Oh, wait, was that my voice and my projection and my ego? Or was that coming from my higher self? It's much harder to discern it. When it's coming from the emotional place, there's no discerning. I mean, it's raw. It's just raw, and there's no lying to it. But see, the lying comes in from our ego that starts engaging, and this programming that we have of emotion, and we get off kilter that way. And so that's what I was really thinking about this week, is just how interesting it was to observe that process of the thoughts. And then what was coming with the thoughts for me was then the feeling, this existential feeling, and then being out of control with that, and stepping out and thinking about, okay, how do I master this? And a lot of people saying, oh, just ascend above this, or, they tell you, well, you should be doing this, or, you create your own reality, so just tell yourself it's not happening. And, there's sort of this pathway that they lay out that you should do it like this, when in actuality, I don't think that our goal here is to not experience the feelings. As long as we're in human bodies on this earth, I think that we should be allowing ourselves to feel the feeling. It's a language, not control us, not like dictate our reality for us, but be a messenger to us of what action that we need to take. And in a sense, to gain enough mastery over it that we can harness the energy and use it in combination, with all our other bodies and faculties to affect change, to preserve ourselves and to affect change in our external environment. So that's what's on my mind this week. Interesting stuff, that I'm thinking about and working through. And as I keep saying, I'm continuing to grow and learn. No way near have I arrived. And I'm just trying to share the things that come up for me as they come up, because maybe some of you have already experienced this and come to this place, and you can help me with the next piece of this puzzle and stepping forward and doing this work. And maybe what I'm sharing with you is completely new and will help you in your path and your journey. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I love you guys so much.